Okay, I think I'll use the chance to have 2 more minutes for my presentation. Okay. So my name's Mariana Burak, and I will start just with some brief presentation of myself, the introduction. I'm originally from Ukraine, and I've been serving as an academic director of the School of Ukrainian Language and Culture at the Ukrainian Catholic University for many, many years. But currently I'm residing in Canada, and for the last 7 years I've been teaching Ukrainian at the University of Toronto. And today I'm going to speak about something my team at the Ukrainian Catholic University never imagined would be the focus of our research. And I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers of this forum and for your invitation to be part of it, which I've never imagined to be. We entered the field of language assessment with a very clear and modest goal to develop a standardized, validated proficiency assessment in the Ukrainian language. However, the events that followed, particularly related to large-scale displacement of Ukrainians, forced us to rethink some assumptions about language assessment we had, going far beyond the linguistic material itself. It is these emerging questions, observations, and insights grounded in the Ukrainian case that I will be sharing with you today during this presentation. When language and migration are discussed, the focus is usually on how receiving countries can help immigrants to learn the language of their new environment in order to integrate. But what is often missing from this discussion is the recognition that immigrants do not arrive linguistically empty. They bring entire linguistic repertoires with them: languages, literacy practices, professional, communicative skills. In this presentation, I would like to shift the focus slightly and consider an alternative model of integration by asking, what if integration did not mean replacement, but rather expansion? Building on this perspective, we asked ourselves if institutions such as language assessment can help recognize and value the linguistic capital that migrants already bring with them. In the recent supplement to the CFR Alignment Handbook, language users are viewed as autonomous social agents whose plurilingual repertoires are part of democratic participation. And this perspective becomes especially important in contexts of mass displacement and resonates strongly with those cases we've been working with while assessing the displaced Ukrainians. Typically, standardized language tests are designed inside a country to serve immigrants entering it. But large-scale displacement waves can reverse this dynamic entirely, creating a situation where testing needs to go beyond the national borders to serve emigrants rather than immigrants. This reversal appears not to be merely logistical. It signals a fundamental shift in what language assessment is for and whom it serves. Crucially, not only the model of language assessment changes, but its purpose shifts from facilitating integration into a new society to maintaining linguistic identity in diaspora. This is the context in which our test, the SOUL assessment, has been operating. Our School of Ukrainian Language and Culture, abbreviated to SOUL, has been working in Ukrainian language teaching and material development for more than 2 decades. In 2021, we were invited by a Ukrainian school in London, UK, to develop a proficiency test for their graduates. We welcomed this opportunity as it aligned with our long-held ambition to complete what Barry O'Sullivan describes as a comprehensive learning system, a model in which teaching, learning, and assessment form an integrated and coherent cycle. In 2022, we administered the first exam to a group of students in London. Shortly after, the situation changed essentially. Large-scale displacement led to a rapid diversification of test takers and their needs. The new candidates' linguistic repertoires were far more complex than traditional testing models tend to assume. To understand these changes, we drew on 2 key concepts: stakeholders, all individuals and institutions affected by the assessment, and consequences, the impact the test has on stakeholders. At the initial stage, both the stakeholder group and the intended consequences were clearly delineated. The test functioned as a school-leading examination within Ukrainian Saturday schools. After 2022, both expanded significantly. The stakeholder group expanded to include test takers, institutions, and policymakers, while university admission, professional certification, language maintenance support, and the broader recognition of Ukrainian as an international language have become potential consequences of our testing. This prompted us to rethink a very basic assumption underlying our language assessment, and we made a key decision to repurpose and retrofit our exam. What began as a special purpose school leaving test evolved in a general proficiency exam designed for a much broader and diverse group of candidates. But who are our candidates? Alongside the traditional L2 and heritage learners, there appeared a new category of displaced L1 speakers. Moreover, part of displaced Ukrainians were young people who left their L1 environment between early childhood and adolescence. Since then, they have undergone a language shift towards the language of their new host country, accompanied by gradual attrition of Ukrainian. This process, well documented in the heritage language literature, for example, in the work of Selina Montrol on incomplete acquisition and attrition, repositions their L1 status towards that of heritage speakers rather than native speakers in a stable L1 environment. Thus, we found ourselves in a situation where, on the one hand, our Ukrainian L2 proficiency test already served heritage speakers in diaspora context, and on the other hand, the linguistic profile of the displaced Ukrainian youth often overlapped substantially with that of heritage speakers. And this led us to the assumption that a well-designed L2 proficiency framework might not only be applicable, but arguably become more appropriate for this group than a native speaker form. However, this shift in the certification scope raises a number of questions regarding test validity. To frame these questions, I draw on the fairness framework developed by Anthony John Kunnan. His model highlights 4 dimensions: validity, absence of bias, equitable treatment, and social consequences. In displacement context, Each of these dimensions takes on new meaning and brings a series of questions. Validity requires recognizing plurilingual repertoires and possible language attrition, especially among young immigrants. Absence of bias means avoiding assumptions about stable educational environments and uniform L1 development. Equitable treatment requires sensitivity to disrupted life circumstances, including trauma. Social consequences of testing become particularly important because certification can not only support displaced individuals in maintaining their linguistic identity, but also in pursuing academic or career goals in new societies. Do we have answers to all these questions? Definitely no, at least not yet. It's too early to draw firm conclusions. But the questions we have asked ourselves and our candidates allow us to address some of them, with others still to be addressed in further research. I should note here that validity work is already underway. After we noticed changes in the test takers' population, we conducted diff analysis at our B1 level, which identified and allowed us to address a bias between Slavic and non-Slavic language background speakers. Moreover, our right map analysis also revealed a cluster of very high scorers at the same B1 level, which we were able to associate with recently displaced test takers. And after that, we realized that those test takers were taking a test below their proficiency, their level of proficiency, just because higher level tests were not yet available. So we ran our analysis both including and excluding this cluster to check the stability of our findings. We expect that with B2 level testing now launched by our SOUL assessment and a C1 level test in preparation, this population will be assessed at a level appropriate to their proficiency, and the data picture will become considerably clearer as those tests accumulate candidates. As our research developed, it was social consequences dimension that came into our sharpest focus. To better understand them, we conducted a quantitative analysis of survey data collected from Ukrainian learners worldwide, and complemented them by a qualitative analysis of structured interviews with educators and policymakers across diverse contexts. It is important to mention here, though, that this survey was originally designed to map the broader landscape of Ukrainian language learners and their attitudes towards certification, not specifically to study displaced youth. The pattern relating to recent displaced candidates emerged from the data we received. Therefore, the conclusions relating specifically the displaced youth should be understood as preliminary. So the survey included 140 Ukrainian language learners aged 15 to 86, representing 22 countries. The questionnaire collected data on participants' linguistic background, proficiency self-assessment, plurilingualism, and attitudes towards Ukrainian language certification. According to the recent data from the Center for Economic Strategy, over 5.6 million Ukrainians are currently living abroad, with the largest concentrations in Europe. The geographical distribution of our respondents was designed to reflect the global dispersion of Ukrainian language learners in general, and also including the countries that have received significant number of Ukrainian migrants. More than 1/3 of our respondents identified Ukrainian as their first language, while the remaining two-thirds reflect a striking, diverse, plurilingual profile. Regarding the importance of certification in Ukrainian, a slight majority of respondents indicated that having the opportunity to obtain a Ukrainian proficiency certificate is valuable. Notably, almost all respondents who mentioned the importance of such certificate reported that they would need the certificate not for use within Ukraine, but as a way to demonstrate their plurilingual competence in an international context. What is particularly striking is that respondents' primary motivation for obtaining a certificate are not institutional. The most frequently selected reasons relate to self-understanding, maintaining a connection to Ukraine, and express identity. Professional and educational purposes are present, but secondary. This suggests that in displacement contexts, language certification may not only be a tool for mobility, but also a means of maintaining linguistic identity and personal continuity, reinforcing our argument that assessment here serves not only evaluative, but also social and identity-related functions. The survey findings were further supported and expanded through 12 semi-structured interviews with educators and policymakers from 7 countries, aligned as far as possible with the distribution of recent Ukrainian immigrants. The interviews reveal 5 key trends. Integration and reciprocal recognition. Ukrainian language curricula and assessment are increasingly being integrated into education systems across different countries, in Poland, Germany, and the UK, for example. What is particularly interesting is that this process is reciprocal. Ukrainian schools abroad are now being finally formally recognized by Ukraine's Ministry of Education. Certification is increasingly used to recognize plurilingual competence. Certain universities in different countries or in specific regions within them may award credit for Ukrainian certificates, including in Germany and Poland, with discussions ongoing in the UK. Employers, too, increasingly value this proficiency. For example, teachers in Ukrainian in some parts of Germany are required to submit a certificate of proficiency. Certification is safe space. For many displaced Ukrainians, the cases when they are offered to take a proficiency test in a language associated with the aggressor state is not simply a linguistic issue, it is one connected to personal and collective trauma. And we know cases like this, they were on the media. So our sole certification in Ukrainian has increasingly incorporated trauma-informed practices with test developers consulting specialists in trauma psychotherapy. In this sense, certification becomes a tool for psychological safety. After all, it is also the matter of the language status itself. After a long period of suppression under occupying regimes, Ukrainian is gaining institutional recognition and visibility, in part through the development of an internationally recognized certification system. And a telling example is its inclusion in Poland's official Ministry of Science and Higher Education list of recognized language certificates. We are proud to be on the list next to all of you. Cambridge, IELTS, Goethe certificate, Delhi, and so on. So we are there now. And urgency of language maintenance amid attrition. What is the matter of utmost importance is the fact that almost all interviewees expressed concern about rapid attrition of Ukrainian, particularly among prepubertal children. And This concern is supported by ongoing research at the University of York. The first stage of the study collected data in 2023, approximately 1 year after the onset of mass migration. The second stage, which will track changes over time, is about to begin, and we believe the new findings will reveal the real situation on Ukrainian language attrition rates. After the first stage of their project, the researchers emphasized the urgency of action, highlighting that the window for effective intervention is rapidly closing due to the age specifics of displaced minors. While awaiting for the second stage of the York study, we explored this issue within our own dataset, analyzing the correlation between preferences for using the first language and time elapsed since leaving the L1 environment. In our sample, 80% of respondents who were born in Ukraine and identified Ukrainian as their first language had left Ukraine less than 12 years ago, a period we associated with the onset of the war in 2014. And as the graph suggests, there is a noticeable tendency for preference for using Ukrainian to decrease over time spent outside the language environment. While the correlation is not strong, the overall trend supports concerns about language attrition and highlights the importance of timely intervention. This is particularly important in light of future engagement with the first language. Only 22% of respondents report a firm intention to return to Ukraine. Nearly 20% state they will not return, and almost 59% remain undecided. Data from CES survey further suggests that the intention to return decreases with time spent outside the country. This indicates that certification may increasingly be needed as proof of plurilingual competence in international context, rather than for use within Ukraine. At the same time, the CES findings show that maintaining a connection with the Ukrainian education system has a positive effect on return intentions, allowing us to assume that access to Ukrainian language certification may play a similar role in sustaining both linguistic ties and potential future engagement with Ukraine. To summarize, the Ukrainian case shows how the shift of focus to how language assessment can recognize and value linguistic resources migrants already bring becomes not just theoretical, but necessary. If we return to our initial question, what if integration means expansion rather than replacement, then assessment becomes central, not as a gatekeeping tool, but as a mechanism of recognition of the migrants' plurilingualism. In times of displacement, especially large-scale ones, fair language assessment may mean shifting its purpose from testing what migrants lack to recognizing what they already possess. The Ukrainian case reminds us that language assessment can do more than certificate proficiency. It can help sustain a language, support its speakers across borders, and ensure that displacement does not lead to the loss of linguistic identity. Thank you.
Seem to have questions for everyone. Thank you so much, Mariana. That was a really interesting presentation. So it's not so much of a question, but maybe a consideration. I was wondering, when you were talking about the questions that you have in the different aspects of, so you had validity, I don't remember. So it was specific, yeah, the fairness.
The Kunnans.
Yes, so in the validity side, I wonder if having some kind of consideration of attrition as being part of the trauma experience of the young migrants would also be part of the construct in a way, like it's part of the way you're thinking of validity with the questions that you had. Maybe a consideration as well, not only for the other aspects of fairness, but also within the validity aspect. Something to consider.
Yes, and thank you very much for that. This is why I'm here, just because, as I said, all those findings were, we got them just in process of working on our tests, and what we validated before this mass displacement is not really relevant now. So thank you very much for this valid point that we should include this, and this will definitely impact our content validity. Something to be considered, absolutely.
Thanks, Mariana. I just wanted to congratulate you because I think the work that you're doing is unique. I don't think it's been done before, or not to my knowledge. And it's really interesting that you're having to grapple with such issues, obviously not of your own doing, but you've had to deal with that and not only create a new test, and that's difficult enough to do it well, but bring in these issues that we haven't really had to deal with. And I hope the work you are doing will be an inspiration to others that may, unfortunately, end up finding themselves in similar situations in the future. Obviously, we hope that won't happen, but we know what life is like, and these sorts of things happen. So I guess, have you any reflections at the moment as to whether what you've done can be replicated for other contexts, other languages perhaps? I mean, I don't know, you've been so focused, and rightly so, on your own context, but have you been able to think more broadly about applying it in different contexts? Maybe not.
Thank you, Graham. First of all, thank you for your immense support, you personally and the whole ALTE team. But for you, we wouldn't probably have done what we've done and wouldn't even dare to start. Thank you for all the inspiration and support. Regarding this new aspect, as I said, we've never thought we will have to deal with social aspects, at least as a large-scale phenomenon. Your question just reminded me the recent conversation, by the way, one of the interviews we had within this project with a Polish policymaker and educator. And he said, you know what, you don't really understand that today you are developing everything for your immigrants, but not a single country can be safe and can predict that they will not be accepting immigrants tomorrow massively. So that was kind of an encouragement from him, saying that, well, today your people leave, but tomorrow in this crazy world, you may have to accept to receive newcomers and be ready with all possible ways to deal with that. So by that I mean that every single country may face the challenges Ukraine is facing now, hopefully not, right? But this is a reverse process. So at some moment you deal with immigrants. At some other point you may have to focus on immigrants. And anyway, there are people leaving the countries, right? Globalization, mobility, and we will have to keep that in mind even if it's not a large-scale phenomenon. How to support our citizens who decided to change their location in their new environment. This is about fairness, I believe, right? And justice. Thank you.